Hi everyone, I'm Annie Barbour. There's a bonus segment at the end of today's recording that you're not going to want to miss. A great interview I had with a lady named Kristen McNeely. So I hope you enjoy that and today's episode. Good evening from Southern California. It's still bright and sunny outside, although it's technically the evening. It is July 16th, 2020, a year that will go down in infamy, I'm sure. And we are having our fourth conversation about anxiety. And tonight we're going to focus on resources. And I really hope, all of us hope, that you'll find something or many somethings that you can move toward that will be practical steps in helping you either manage your anxiety better or to be able to have a tool or two in your hands as you're moving toward people that you know who are suffering from anxiety or other issues, panic attacks and so forth. We care deeply about this for lots of different reasons, but one of the things that we've been talking about from week to week is the fact that especially our millennials and our Gen Zers are suffering far and wide on pandemic levels with anxiety and related mental issues. And many are suffering silently. The generations that are older than them are struggling, I think, to catch up to the reality of the pervasiveness of how they're suffering. And beyond that, equipping ourselves so that we can come alongside and meaningfully help people in our lives who are dealing with anxiety day to day, panic attacks, whatever those issues are. We don't want them suffering silently. We want to come alongside and help and alleviate suffering. So that's the impetus for these conversations. I have Summer Thurman joining me. She's at the bottom of your screen. She's an educator and a very courageous and intelligent young lady who deals with anxiety on a daily basis. And she's here to alert the troops and to let us know what life is like and how she's found help. So we're very grateful for Summer, and Dr. Laura Cavarretta is here, who specializes in addiction and recovery. She's a doctor of psychology, and she comes with a wealth of experience and knowledge to contribute to this conversation as well. Stacy DeWitt is normally with us. She is on a very well-deserved and earned few days off. So she'll be with us for our concluding episode next week. And in a little bit, we'll be cutting away to an interview that I did yesterday with a marriage and family therapist named Kristen McNeely. And you'll find those about 10, 11 minutes, really informative. She's also a board certified behavior analyst. And I had a great conversation with her yesterday, so that'll be part of tonight's conversation too. So there'll be more wardrobe changes. I hope you're sitting down so you don't get like dizzy or something from the shift in scenery here that you'll have. So let's get going. I'm going to throw the conversation first to Dr. Cavarretta, and I'm wanting to know specifically, how do I assess myself if I'm suffering with anxiety so that I know, do I need help?
So I was thinking about it in terms of three different components. One, there's a very physical aspect to it, because like we've talked about before, you're really in a state of high arousal. You're getting prepared to fight or flight or freeze. And sometimes, and we've talked about this too, it's very useful. You know, it's that adrenaline that you get before you go on stage, or you're entering into a race or doing something that's really important to you. And so part of it is, how much is that interfering with your ability to do life? You know, certainly when you get into the realm of panic attacks, that can seriously interfere with your ability to do your life. So we have the physical part, we have the worry part, we have the racing thoughts, the obsessiveness about something that's going on in your life or something that you're afraid is going to go on in the future. And that too can be very consuming and seriously interfere with your work, with your relationships, and it can interfere with your sleep. So those are things that you want to look at. Third, and this is something that concerns me a lot of times the most, and I talked about the woman who actually helped to fund Fuller's Graduate School of Psychology, who was afraid of bridges. Mm-hmm. So if you find yourself avoiding crowds, always needing to have an escape, if you're in a crowded situation, which isn't happening much anymore, but you don't want to get to a place where you start to avoid going out, which becomes like agoraphobia, fear of going out. So those are the different things that I would be looking at. How much are these symptoms interfering with my ability to live my life? That's what I want people to ask themselves.
Okay. And if I'm sort of thick in self-analysis, do I ask my loved ones?
Absolutely. That's a great point. Because a lot of times they can see something in us that we can't see. Some of my clients too, as they're getting better, they don't necessarily see it as much as the people around them see it. So that's a really good point. If someone is telling you, I think something's wrong, something's off, or to ask them, how do you think I'm doing? Absolutely. That's a very good point. Yeah.
Okay, good. And so I guess you've sort of answered this next question, which is help us understand the spectrum from mild anxiety to acute anxiety. I assume it falls along those lines of how much is this impeding your ability to do normal life? Is there anything else you want to say about that, though?
I think that, and I guess I'll just kind of segue into, I know the next part of this is the treatment part. So if it's mild, it's like any medical condition. Usually they'll say, utilize home treatment, right? So home treatment with anxiety might look like, looking at the physical part. We're going to do some deep breathing and see if that helps. We're going to do some mindfulness, trying to stay present in the moment. We're going to do some yoga, and see if that helps. In terms of the worry, I really like to examine my thoughts. I'll tell people, observe your thoughts. If you're thinking about things that are in the future a lot, you might want to say to yourself, that's not happening right now, and I can take care of it when it comes. Another thing you might be able to do is set a worry time. Have you guys heard of this? You're just gonna set a time where you're gonna worry. You're just gonna worry the heck out of everything. But you're gonna limit it to 20 minutes. And so at any other time in the day, you're gonna say, you know what? Nope, that's for my worry time at 5 p.m.
Okay.
I like to write it down and then close the book on it too. So it's kind of containing the worry. And then for those of us who are Christians, don't worry about anything, pray about everything, pray. Don't avoid anything, go to everything. Don't avoid any important meetings, any social things. So that's the mild thing, that's the at-home treatments. I think Summer will talk more about that. If you cannot do that, then likely you need what we call a higher level of care. Mm-hmm. So that's when you're going to, first off, find a therapist, set up an appointment. And how do you find a therapist? You can go through your insurance and you can find people that are contracted with your insurance. Go ahead and ask them if it's important to you. Are you a Christian? They'll tell you, or are you Jewish? If that's an important part of your therapy, go ahead and ask them. For those of us who are Christians, there's a few different organizations that have networks of therapists. I'm on a panel with New Life, with the program New Life Live. You can call their number and ask for a referral for a therapist. I'm also on the panel with Focus on the Family. You can call them up, and they have very much verified that the therapist that they're going to refer you to do have that faith, in Christ. You can go to the alumni office of like Fuller, where I went and our pastor went, and ask, hey, where are your alumni practicing? If you're in Arcadia, is there anyone there? So those are some really practical ways to find a therapist.
Right.
Once you get there, that your therapist will let you know if you need a higher level of care than that. So usually you try it. And when I am seeing someone and they say, you know what, I really need to have a second appointment this week, and that is great, that is fine. But then when I'm getting calls in between and they're just really suffering, I'll say, let's put you into like a day program. So we have outpatient that feels like it's just not doing the job, it's not cutting it. We might want to add on some groups, and therapy daily, and that's called an intensive outpatient program. Along with that, medication can be very helpful, especially when I see people that are in a tremendous amount of pain, because what the medication does is it helps to settle some of those physical symptoms that you're getting that are so uncomfortable. And when you do that, a lot of times, then you can think more clearly, then you can set that worry time. If you can't do that at home, you might need some assistance, and the medication can break up those neural pathways too.
Can I ask, what is pain? Are we talking physical pain, emotional pain? What kind of pain?
I think that there's a physical pain, the nausea, the pit in the stomach, that is usually very helpfully addressed with a physical solution. Sometimes we can do the mind over matter, and we can think the right thoughts. The helpful thoughts. I try to stay away from right and wrong. The helpful thoughts that say, hey, God is with me, He's for me, we can comfort ourselves. And in thinking those thoughts, then we're able to also address the physical pain. But when we can't do that, when we can't get a hold of our thoughts, we can't comfort ourselves, the medication can help with that as well. People find themselves then thinking less negative thoughts. And very importantly, when your pain, your physical pain, your emotional pain, the worry, great question, Annie, the worry that's going on, that is so consuming and obsessive, when we can break those down, then we're not going to be avoiding things like getting on an airplane, or avoiding bridges or leaving the house. So we're going to kind of address it, break it up with the physical medication, for anxiety. And then that helps us to not move into a more acute phase of avoiding things. Yeah. Very rarely someone might need to go into residential treatment, but that is pretty rare. That happens when people are addressing their anxiety with things like addictive behavior, drugs and alcohol. They may need that time away from all of those things to get a handle on how they've been trying to cope with their anxiety, and get those tools and medication and skills to handle it in a healthy way.
So that's a massive point, is if you have been responding to your anxiety by using, and I'm sure all of us can think of folks that we know who have, that's been the way that they've successfully responded to that level of pain, is by essentially anesthetizing.
Absolutely.
That's going to put them in a whole different bracket.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. It breaks my heart, and I just want to kind of conclude with this. When someone comes to my office and they are in physical pain. They've been worried. It's affecting their health. They are avoiding certain situations. And I'll ask them, I'll say, well, how long has this been going on? And sometimes they'll tell me 15 years. So I would really rather you get help sooner rather than later. And sometimes we can like kind of nip it in the bud. I had a client where he had some panic attacks. We were able to, he had a death in the family where the person was not expected to die. There was a great chance that she was going to live. And after that, every physical symptom he had, we traced it back that he thought, oh, this is happening. Most people survive, but I might die. So figuring it out that that's where it came from and addressing that, he was doing much better along with medication in months. So it's like, please, if you think you need help, you probably do. Because not everybody like races to my office because it's just so fun to be here. You know? so please seek out help.
Yeah. I think even breaking it down like this is extremely hopeful. So if you're experiencing anxiety, then you have some sense now, I think, of the breadth that it can grow and the opportunities that you have to address it straight away. But even those who have, for whatever reason, addressed it with addictive behavior, even for them, there's help.
Absolutely.
So I just hope if you're watching and you could be anywhere on that spectrum, including out and going, you know, I've been doing drugs and I'm an alcoholic by now for the 20 years that I've been addressing my anxiety with those substances. Even for you, there's a way back. So as I've been exploring this over these several weeks in earnest, I'm so happy to be able to say that more than anything, I'm growing in my sense of hope for how much help there is to be had wherever you would find yourself. And I just want to pass that on to you if you're watching. There's hope, super practical, pervasive ways for you to move toward healing wherever it is that you find yourself. So we'll do our best to put all of the things that we've referenced right below the screen here, which might be a good starting place for you. And then if you don't see it there, then you can write a note and I'll get it and we'll respond to it the best that we know how. But I want you to be, like me and just having a real strong sense of hope. There's hope for you. I've had a season of panic attack. I've had a couple years season where I had extensive and debilitating claustrophobia on airplanes. And for almost 30 years, I fly to work. So to be afraid to get on an airplane for a couple years wasn't a small thing in my life. And I watched the Lord meet me and help me through that so that I'm on the other side of it and I don't deal with that at all anymore. I've had loved ones in my life who have suffered profoundly with anxiety in their early years, anxiety that manifested in abdominal migraines, which I'd never heard of before. But if you're a certain age bracket, like maybe between 8 and 12, 13, 14, those are not impossible to get. And your body's just going, we are trying to process really anxiety and we don't know how. So there are all kinds of different ways that anxiety and panic attacks and things that are related to that can manifest. But for all of it, if you're aware and reaching out for help, there is help. And so boy, do we want you to know that. And before I pull you in here, hi, Summer. Before I pull you in here, I just, we are Christians. So we pull this conversation about anxiety through a Christ-centered lens. And we believe that the Lord when he walked the earth 2,000 years ago, he gave us an inkling into how it is to respond to the whole of life. He knew life wasn't easy. It wasn't easy then. It's not easy now. And he addressed it then, and it's relevant now. And in the Sermon on the Mount, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but he talks a lot about anxiety in Matthew chapter 6, starting at verse 25. But he finishes by helping us understand, if you're a Christian, there's a way that non-Christians respond to life. And Jesus was going, but there's a way I want you to respond to life as a Christ one. And he said, I think it's verse 32, if my glasses are telling me the truth here. He says, even the Gentiles, meaning non-Christians, seek after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. And he'd just been talking about all kinds of things that were causing these people he was talking to be really anxious, like super fundamental pieces of life. What am I going to wear? What am I going to eat? Am I going to make it through the next day? And he's saying the world is thinking those thoughts, but I want you to think these thoughts. And he tells them to do two things. And he says, seek first the kingdom of God, and secondly, his righteousness. And essentially what he's saying is, I'm going to give you permission to think about completely different kinds of things, and I'm going to take care of those needs that today you're anxious about. You don't even have to think about them, let alone be anxious about them. I will care for you. So instead, I want you to think about the kingdom of God, and I want you to think about righteousness. That's a massive conversation. But I'm speaking especially to Christians and those of you going, boy, there's something in me that's stirring right now. Maybe it is the Holy Spirit saying, hey, you need God. And that stirring in you is helping you recognize that need. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But Jesus said 2,000 years ago, and he's saying to us today, I know what you need. Let me take care of you. Instead of worrying, instead of being anxious, think about kingdom things. Think about righteousness, and I'll take care of you. Now, if I was saying that to somebody in the throes of a panic attack, or somebody who is critical in their level of anxiety, that would just be a cruel thing to say. So I don't mean to minimize at all. But there are enough of us out there, especially in the day and age that we're living in, where people are riddled with fear. Maybe people that have said, hey, I've been confident my whole life, but these last few months with COVID and election and racial tensions and everything else has got me totally whacked out, and I'm fearful and anxious. And if you're a Christ one, then I'm just inviting you, as Jesus invites you, think about kingdom things. Think about his righteousness. Go to Philippians 4 and find out what it is that God would have you occupy your mind with, and see if he doesn't meet you there and alleviate that anxiety that you're not used to having. And for those of us who know people that are suffering profoundly with anxiety and panic attacks and other disorders, then I'm just encouraging you, then let's intercede for our people. Let's think kingdom thoughts on their behalf, and let's go before the Lord and pray and intercede until they can get their feet. And that might not be the only thing we would do for them, but that should be our first order of business for our loved ones who are suffering. So this book, the Bible, isn't silent on this subject. And I can't imagine, honestly, those of you that are watching, I can't imagine trying to navigate these things, anxiety, panic disorders, apart from the Lord, and asking him to be the one to guide me to resources and help. So he has his eye on you, and that's a really good thing, even if you don't have any idea who he is. All right, Summer, as the Lord has been showing you, shining a light on your anxiety and starting to open up. This isn't a brand new thing for you, but just starting to open up the kinds of help that there is. What kind of protocol or self-help are you practicing these days or wanting to practice? How's it going for you, and what are you doing to help?
So I love, Laura, that you talked about the different of care and levels of care. I kind of have a mix of all of them. So I'm going to start with the stuff at home that I do for myself. So what helps me a lot is, I mean, I'm a teacher, so I know children, when they're like kind of being, wouldn't use the word crazy, but they're excited and they're moving around a lot. I use the phrase calm your body. So I think about that with myself on how I can calm my body, right? So there's different ways that I calm my body. At home, I like to take hot showers. I like to sit in the dark. I know some may think I'm like sad or something, but it just helps me calm my body. As a Christian, I love to be in the Word and journal. That helps me relax and calm my thoughts. And listening to music or nature sounds really helps me. So when I find myself having trouble sleeping at night, I'll play like birds chirping in the forest or ocean waves crashing. So that's my level of help while I'm at home. Unfortunately, my anxiety manifests a little bit more than just that level, so I have to go up one more level. Since I was 18, I have been seeking therapy treatment and have also been on medication. And I know that there's, for those watching, I know there's a negative connotation sometimes to going to or taking medication, but I can tell you guys that it's changed my life. Like, therapy has been so amazing. I go once a week, and I'm so thankful. And the medication that I'm on helps me not spiral as much in those moments of panic. So that's what helps me. I'm still learning, and I would love to learn more breathing techniques. And I don't know what they're called, Laura. I remember you said like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I know there's a word for those kind of things. I'm eager to learn more about those kind of things. So.
That is part of the mindfulness. And I still don't remember the order, so you'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
But really what you're doing is you're causing yourself to be present in the moment. You know, as you're thinking about the 5 things you can see and what you can hear and what you can smell, you're really staying present in the moment, because so much of anxiety is all that fear about the future. And really in this moment, you have everything you need. You know, just like Annie was saying earlier, we have everything we need. And he's going to take care of the future, right? And so yes, those are great things to practice too.
Yeah, I'm eager and excited to practice those and learn more.
Do those fall under a category of like grounding techniques?
Yes, I think that's kind of a general word that people use, but really it is feeling connected to what's happening in this present moment. And sometimes too, like when I worked at the substance use facility, the therapist would take their clients out to the beach and just have them dig their toes into the sand. And again, it's really being aware that they are in this present moment. They're fine in this present moment. They have everything they need right then. So it's connecting with that, because I don't know if you experienced this summer, but I have, and maybe you too, Annie, like when you go off in your thoughts and you're worrying, how aware are you of what's going on right here? Not very aware, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's almost the antidote to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've addressed this now, but let's just get specific sort of in review. The different veins of help. There are techniques that I can apply. There is medication, potentially, that would be, that probably not my therapist, but a psychiatrist. That's going to be somebody who I'm with if I'm moving toward medication. Unless somebody's just introducing like a serotonin med or something, my GP could do that for me. But we're probably talking about something a little more sophisticated than that. There's reading materials that can help me understand what's happening physiologically. There's a lot of science that's being done so I can get an education. Kristen talked about that, which by now you've seen that little segment. And we haven't really addressed that too much. She referenced it. But what would you want us to know about just the science of what's happening to an anxious mind or a mind that's in the throes of panic attacks? It's not somebody who's just lazy in their thinking. There's some physiological manifestation that's taking place.
I think that we addressed a little bit of this when we talked about that limbic system.
Yes.
Where the part of the brain is just overactive, and it is sending off signals that are saying that we're in distress, even though our mind is in distress. We are thinking we are very likely to be in distress, but we're not in distress at this moment in time. And that's why it is so damaging to our physicality, because we are not meant to be in this hypervigilant state all the time.
Right.
So something else there too that I think everyone can address this. What's your norm? What's your, as I would call it, what's your steady state? How anxious are you all the time? Because if you're running at a 7 all the time, there's not a lot of room to get to that 10 full-blown panic attack. I think I'm dying. So it's something I think that people can be maybe looking at now is, what are you doing to keep yourself, and I love that, calm your body, Summer. Mm-hmm. What are you doing to keep yourself in that calm state on a daily basis?
Right.
The practice of yoga is awesome, because again, it's that mindfulness, being very in touch with what's happening in your body. Definitely morning meditations, making sure you're not, we talked about social media, making sure you're not watching a lot of news and social media, especially at nighttime.
Right.
Being very cognizant of what you're thinking about right before you go to bed, because your mind is going to kind of sit on that all night long. So do you operate in a manner that keeps you more peaceful, more calm? And then you have more of a cushion, before you actually get into a real panic state.
Right. And that leads me to think too, one of the resources that we have is to recognize those things that, put the numbers up 3, 4, 5 points. And once we recognize them, then we have a choice to make, right? That's real and super practical. If scrolling through or thumbing through Instagram is spiking my anxiety every night, that's a huge key piece of information. And I have to respond to that. And that's going to take a lot of, I have to be honest, right? Brutally honest, maybe, especially if that's something that is a habit. And I go, yeah, but you don't understand. I do that for 4 hours a day. And if you had a drinking problem, you wouldn't, if you were an alcoholic, you might not say, well, let's try it instead of 10 drinks a day to get it down to 7. I mean, what kind of danger are we in, for instance, if gaming is now an addiction, or if social media is now an addiction? What should our response be? What should our response be? Looking at that as a resource to curb, stop, eliminate our exposure to those things that we now recognize are really messing with our anxiety level.
I think you talked about a couple of important things. One is, what are your triggers? What is going to set you off in general? And recognizing that, like you said, then you give yourself more options. You go, okay, that's my trigger. How am I going to handle that? What are my coping skills going to be? And the danger of using one coping skill, which is not very healthy, like drugs, like alcohol, like social media, like gaming, you don't have any other coping skills. What are you going to do when you don't have access to the drug, the alcohol, the social media, the gaming? And I think it is very limiting to go and do that, because really we're very relational people and we get calmed. You know, Stacy was talking about breathing, you know, and having her son mirror that. We get calmed, we're in the presence of people. And generally, social media, video gaming, even with drugs and alcohol, if you're in the room with someone, you're not really connected to them.
Right.
I think half of our coping skills should be those intimate connections.
Okay. So you're able to look at something and go, my exposure to Instagram is a huge trigger for me.
Yes.
So I'm going to pull back on my exposure to that. And I'm going to replace that with what I'm recognizing is meaningful integration with an actual person. And now I'm putting myself, I'm pulling back on something that's not healthy. I'm moving towards something that is healthy. I mean, those are the kind of practical things that we need to be thinking and doing for ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And that empathy, you guys I wasn't available last time, but you guys are talking about the need for that empathy from another person.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about that too, you know, because I did miss it, but I was thinking, when there's a medical problem, we don't need to know how to solve it, right? We're just there for that person and we're present for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at mental health issues the same way. I think we get a little nervous because we feel like we don't really know what to do. We don't need to know what to do. We can come alongside this person and know that there's nothing to be afraid of. This is a person in pain, you know, whether it be physical, emotional, psychological. The most healing thing we can do is to come alongside them, period, end of story.
Okay. So that's a resource.
Yes.
If you're caring for someone that's struggling, you are a resource. Move toward them, love them, be as patient as you know how to be, reassure them. Don't beat yourself up that you don't have the answers. Your ministry of presence is probably far more powerful than you know.
Absolutely. Summer, do you find that too? Having that person just to be there, empathize with you, connect?
Absolutely. That helps me alone. Just let me like share my thoughts with them, for them to listen and give me reassurance. Sometimes that's all I need. So I have those select, you know, those few people that are my safe place, you know, that I go to in those moments of panic. And they can help bring me out of like that hole I've kind of dug myself in.
Okay.
Absolutely. And when we can't pray, right, for ourselves, we're just too caught up, they can do that for us.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so we keep sort of dipping back into the reality of the hardship of what people are struggling with and maybe the helplessness of how you might feel if someone you love is struggling. But there are a lot of resources, and you yourself might be a resource. So I want to keep trying to tip this upside, the glass half full, because there is a lot to be hopeful about. There's a lot to be hopeful about. There'll be quite a long list underneath this episode of just initial steps, websites to go to. And once again, if you're not seeing what you're looking for, go ahead and just shoot us a note and we'll do our very best to move you in a direction that will be helpful for you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And we believe without hesitation that there is one God, that everything that is was made by him. And he doesn't make mistakes. What he makes is made just the way he intended for it to be made, and that includes you. And when he finished making mankind, we read that he said it was very good what he made. And that would be his heart toward you. And if you are not in relationship with God at this moment, you can be. And he's inviting you to himself through his son, Jesus, who broke down all the barriers between you and God, so that you can embrace what Jesus did and say, would you please let me be one of your kids? And God would say, absolutely. My highest desire for you is that you would be in relationship with me. I hope you are hopeful after this. And I want to thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Dr. Laura. Thanks, Summer. Stace, we'll see you next week. Thank you, Kristen McNeely. And we'll see you guys next week when we sort of wrap up this conversation and talk about anxiety recovery. So we'll look forward to having that chat, and I'll be praying for you in the meantime, and we'll see you next week. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much, Kristen, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know this means a great deal to you. So this conversation is a great fit for both of us. So I'm really excited. Yeah. And Kristen is smart, and she has 3 children under the age of 6 in her house right at this moment.
Yes.
And I have a rogue peacock that lives in my neighborhood. So whatever happens, it's just going to be real, people.
Yes, just ignore any extraneous screaming or squawking.
We've done our best to insulate ourselves, but we also have to be present in our lives. So who knows what could happen. So that's her main job. But then, just as a little additive, she's also a marriage and family therapist and a board certified behavior analyst.
Yes.
And in her profile on her Instagram account, which I'm going to tell you about in just a second, she lists things like an anxiety warrior. And so that tells you that she believes that you probably ought to be a warrior if you move toward anxiety.
Yes, right.
I agree. And then to me, this is the most insightful, and really this is the key, I think, to why the Lord sent her into this conversation. She says, after anxiety warrior, encouragement and evidence-based strategies for managing mental health and motherhood. Yeah. So we're focusing on mental health here, which motherhood contributes to.
Yes.
Lack of.
Yes.
Those are sort of, we get that.
Yeah.
But in that sentence, encouragement and evidence-based strategies for managing mental health, that gives you the idea that you have a part to play in your own mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so Kristen, you have this Instagram presence called Hello Resilience.
Yeah.
I'm just curious why you started trying to raise awareness about anxiety in this forum.
Oh, 1 second, okay. I went through about a 6-month period where I was experiencing really severe panic attacks. And I ended up needing to take a leave of absence from work because of it. And I was talking to my best friend after I had gotten back to work and was telling her some of the strategies that I was using. And I felt really fortunate to have the background that I do, both in mental health and behavioral health, because treatment for panic is very much a marriage of the two. And so my reentry to work was really only possible because of my boss and her support. And so I was telling my best friend about the strategies that I was using, that I was able to use because of my boss's flexibility. And she said, oh my gosh, you should start an Instagram account and tell people about this. And I just became really passionate specifically about mental health in the workplace because my husband experiences anxiety at work. My friends experience anxiety at work. So many people do. And I don't think we realize the impact that supervisors, managers, owners can play in alleviating some of that. And so it really came from a passion to just kind of spread the word, because I think anxiety has become less and less stigmatized as it's become more and more talked about in recent years, but nobody really talks about it in the workplace. And so I just felt really a calling to just share my story and start talking about that.
That's awesome. And so you're doing that now. What, how have you seen it be effective?
I was recently on a podcast, actually. One of my friends runs a podcast, and I was telling her, sometimes I get discouraged and I feel like it's not growing as quickly as I had hoped it would, or I'm not getting as many comments on posts as I thought I would. And every time something like that happens, or I have that thought, someone will DM me and tell me how helpful a post was, or how helpful the account is, or how much they feel inspired by my willingness to share my story. And so I think that has really just been a gift, and that's what kind of keeps it going.
That's great. Yeah, I can relate in my own experiences here. You just, if it's in you and you have a form to create content for people, the need is there, then we trust the Lord
exactly.
to custom deliver it to whomever would need it.
And whether it's 300 people or 300,000, we don't know who needs to hear the message that we have.
That's right.
And so right now I just keep trying to stay faithful to what he's asking me to do. And it's funny because I think I get the feeling that some have questioned, people who know me and know I'm a believer, maybe have questioned why my account isn't more Christian focused. I don't put a lot of Bible verses or things like that. And it's just not something that I felt called to do yet. I've really felt called to keep it kind of the way it is, with more of like the science behind things for now. And so I also just feel like the Lord has kind of broadened my horizon of how we reach people. We're all gifted in different ways. And again, it's we don't know who he needs us to reach.
That's right.
And so, right now it's just a matter of being faithful to what I really feel he's asking me to do.
Yeah, that's smart. And that's responsible.
Yeah.
And whether it's science or whatever way we approach a conversation, it's all under the sovereign control of God.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, yeah. It's just maybe some of us are more aware of that reality than others.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I got a practical question for you.
Yes.
For people that are just, our last episode was called Anxiety Apathy.
Okay.
And we were just poking around at the reality that there's still far too many people that either don't take the presence of the pervasiveness of anxiety seriously, whether they don't take the potential severity of it in a person's life seriously, because their lack of just ability to understand.
Yeah.
If it hasn't happened to you, I'm telling you, and if you haven't watched your loved ones suffer, it's hard to get it.
Yes, absolutely.
So one of the things that we really are asking God to do is to wake people up. If they're still asleep, wake them up. Yeah. And if they're aware but apathetic, that something would happen so that that apathy would dissipate and they would begin to engage with their people who are suffering. So if you're just waking up and you just go, wow, I think I get it now. How do you want to talk to that person that just woke up to the reality of it?
Gosh, I think I would say, to really be open. I think that's one way that I've grown over the years too, is just really trying to be more conscious and recognizing that just because I don't understand something doesn't mean it's not valid. It doesn't mean that someone who is experiencing something, that it doesn't feel real to them. I remember when I was getting my MFT intern hours, I was treating someone who was suffering from panic disorder. And I remember I had really good supervision. And so I remember walking her through the different steps of treatment. And her fear was that she felt like she couldn't breathe when she was having a panic attack. And so we would kind of simulate that. And I remember in the office just feeling like, gosh, I can't relate to this at all. This just seems like I can't imagine feeling that way. And it wasn't that I didn't feel empathy for her. Of course I did. That was why I was practicing. Right. But it was impossible to imagine the extent of her fear. And then when I started feeling it myself, it was like, oh, I get it. And it doesn't matter if someone's going to tell me, well, you're not going to stop breathing. Or for me, it was the feeling of being trapped, and didn't matter that somebody could tell me you're not trapped. That feeling was as real as the ground beneath my feet.
Right.
And so I think just really being open to new thought processes is okay. There's something called cognitive dissonance. And it's really just being, when you're presented with a new thought, being really in conflict with that new thought. Well, this thought kind of goes up against my previous belief systems. And so I either change my belief systems or I fight against that thought. And so I would just encourage people to explore those feelings. And if you need to talk through that with someone, that's okay. There's so many good resources, whether it's a therapist or a good friend, someone you trust. Just that openness, I think, is really huge.
Right. And that brings up a good point too, that maybe a therapist isn't just for the person suffering.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, 100%. I had my husband sit in on a therapy session with me when I was going through treatment for panic. And it wasn't because he was purposely being not supportive or didn't want to support me. Well, he did. The problem was that he didn't understand.
Right.
And so he joined me so that he could understand.
Right.
And I think that's one of the most loving things a spouse can do, is to say, I don't understand, but I love you and I want to support you. How can I do that? And joining for therapy is a great way to do that.
Yeah, super, super good point. So that might be a revolutionary thought to you if you're just going, you're kidding me.
Right.
So here's why we're saying open your mind to think new thoughts, and consider that that therapy might be for you, but not in the way that you had imagined it might be. That's really, really great. Super, super good point. And one of the things I love so much about what you're doing on your Instagram account is you're giving people who are dealing with anxiety little, almost like sound bites, visual bites that really can make a difference. Maybe not a huge difference when you're right in the throes of a panic attack.
Sure.
But maybe those things that when that's foreshadowing comes on, or when you're just dealing with maybe a more mild version of your anxiety on a day basis. So what do you think are first steps toward healing that you would recommend for someone who's struggling with anxiety?
I think, and I've talked about this a little bit on my account too, the first step in treatment for panic disorder, anxiety, at least from a cognitive behavioral perspective, is what we call psychoeducation. And it's really understanding what you're experiencing. And when I've kind of done reintroductions on my account, or I've even done posts in the beginning, and I should probably reshare one soon, there was a book that really changed the trajectory of my progress. And it was called Rewire Your Anxious Brain. And it was from a neuropsychologist, and she really explains what is happening in the brain when you experience both anxiety and panic, because they're different. And they come from different parts of the brain. And so it was huge for me because it really validated what I was experiencing. We saw a poisonous black widow.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Actually, just a black widow.
Okay. I need 5 more minutes. Okay.
I did not.
So this book really changed the trajectory of my progress because it was so validating and really helped me understand what was happening in my body. And that helped me feel less crazy. And I think that particularly for anxiety, that is one thing that people struggle with, is they feel like, this is crazy. This doesn't make any sense. I know I don't need to be afraid of X, Y, or Z, or I know that this thought that I'm having about this event is probably never going to happen, but I can't stop this thought from happening. And so I think just really understanding what is happening to you and that it's normal is huge. I think it's a really great step in progress.
And so what's the name of that book?
The book is called Rewire Your Anxious Brain. It's by Catherine Pittman.
Okay. We'll put that resource underneath this video. And we'll also put Hello Resilience under here so that you can join in and follow Kristen and what she's up to. Well, I want to talk all day, and we have to go.
We have a smashed finger. Oh.
So you go save your children from the deadly spider. And God bless you. And I just pray that he would just blow your borders just wide open.
You're so kind. Thank
so
you.
that people are helped. And you said 10 things in here that are just super, super important in just opening up a person's thinking and giving us practical next steps. So I just thank you so much, Kristen.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.